My boss said, "Join my family dinner as my husband." I said, "Sure, but you have to meet my friends." The bandsaw screamed through a thick slab of black walnut, sharp and loud like it was trying to drown out my thoughts. I kept my eyes on the cut line. Steady hands, steady breath. Sawdust filled the air, warm and gritty, smelling like burnt sugar and dry earth. That smell meant I was working. And when I was working, I wasn't thinking about anything else. My phone buzzed against my hip again. Third time in 10 minutes. I ignored it. If the shop wasn't on fire, it could wait. I killed the power, and the blade slowed to a low hum before stopping. Silence settled over the warehouse, broken only by the heater rattling against the Chicago winter, pushing through the brick walls. I ran my thumb along the fresh cut, smooth as glass, perfect. Then the heavy steel fire door slammed open, cold air rushed in, high heels clicked across concrete. Fast, uneven, urgent. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. Natalie Vance didn't belong in my fabrication bay. I wiped my hands on a rag and turned. She stood just inside the yellow loading lines like she had crossed into enemy territory. Camel, cashmere coat, perfect hair, face tight like she was holding herself together by force. Her hazel eyes, usually sharp and controlled, were wide and scanning the shop like she was calculating escape routes. A crumpled legal envelope was clenched in one hand. Her phone looked like it might crack in the other. "I need you to do something insane," she said. I tossed the rag onto the workbench. "You're trespassing," I replied calmly. "This is a hard hat zone." "I know." Her voice cracked just slightly, just enough to prove she was human. "Kaizen, I need you to come to dinner with my father tonight, as my husband." Silence dropped between us like a steel beam. I didn't laugh. I didn't react. I just stared at her until she swallowed. "You can say no," she added quickly. "If you say no, I'll find another way." That sentence mattered. I leaned back against the walnut slab and crossed my arms. "Start over," I said. "Why does your father suddenly care about your love life?" She exhaled slowly, like the truth hurt. "Victor is in town. He brought an attorney. He has acquisition papers for the firm. The trust that keeps my company independent has a clause. If he convinces the board I'm unstable or reckless, he can dissolve it." I watched her closely. "He wants to see me settled," she continued. "Proof I'm not alone. If I walk into that dinner by myself, he walks into a board meeting tomorrow and sells my company into his holding group. I lose control. I lose autonomy. I lose vendor choice." There it was, not romance, war dressed in velvet. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you don't flinch," she said immediately. "And because you know my business. You built half of it with your hands." I studied her, dark circles under her eyes, knuckles white around that envelope. This wasn't a CEO making a power move. This was a daughter trying not to get crushed. "I'm not your employee," I said. "I run my own shop." "I know," she replied quickly. "That's why I came here, not to the office. Here, where you can throw me out." Her honesty landed heavy. 3 hours, I said finally. "Dinner only. No private rooms, no hotel keys, no favors after." Her shoulders dropped like a cable snapping loose. "Thank you." "One condition," I added, her eyes sharpened. "Friday night, you come with me. My world, my friends. No suits, no mergers. You handle my reality." She narrowed her eyes. "Why?" I stepped closer until I could smell rain and jasmine on her coat. "If I'm going to lie to your father," I said quietly, "I need to know you can be real." Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Fine." 2 hours later, I was standing in her office. Glass walls, marble floors, the kind of place that made you stand straighter without asking. She paced behind her desk, phone pressed to her ear. When she hung up, she planted both palms on the marble like she was holding the building upright. "He's already at the Ritz," she said, "with his lawyer." "Of course he is." She shoved a garment bag toward me. "Put this on. You know my size." Quote, "I approve access badges and compliance lists," she said. "I notice things." I took the bag. "Who am I supposed to be tonight?" She looked at me. "You," she said softly, "just a version the Ritz doesn't chew up." I changed in her executive bathroom. Charcoal suit. Italian wool. It fit like it had been tailored for me. I tied the Windsor knot my grandfather taught me before church. In the mirror, I looked expensive. I also looked like a fraud with good shoulders. When I stepped out, she had changed too. Dark green dress, clean lines. Powerful without trying too hard. The fabric moved when she turned, and my throat went dry. "How do I look?" she asked. "Like you're going into battle." She let out a shaky laugh. "Good." Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. "The ring," she said. "It needs to look real." She held out a simple gold band. My grandmother's. I slid it onto her finger. It spun loosely. "I lost weight," she murmured. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a roll of friction tape I used for tool grips. "Gray, ugly, practical, quote." She stared at it. "Give me the ring." I wrapped a thin strip inside the band and slid it back onto her finger. Snug, stable. She turned her hand under the light. "That is the least romantic thing I've ever seen." "Good," I replied. "Romance is fragile." "This isn't." Her eyes met mine then, not CEO eyes, not war eyes, something else, something softer. The driver pulled up outside the Ritz. She looked at me once more before stepping out. "Stay with me," she whispered. And for the first time that night, I wasn't sure if this was just a business arrangement anymore. The Ritz lounge was warm and gold, soft jazz floating through the air, like nothing in the world could go wrong inside those walls. I was still in my gray t-shirt, my suit folded over my arm inside the garment bag. I had refused to dress up until I knew what kind of war one was walking into. Natalia carried 2 boutique shopping bags like props. She hated them. I could see it in the way her fingers held the handles too tight. The blush blazer she had changed into made her look softer, less like a CEO, more like someone playing a role. Victor Vance sat in a leather chair near the bar, a whiskey glass resting in his hand like it belonged there. He didn't stand when we approached. He didn't need to. The man filled the room without moving. His eyes swept over me slowly, from my work boots to my calloused hands to the garment bag over my arm. Calculation lived in that stare. Natalia stepped closer to me, her shoulder almost brushing mine. Not for him, for me. A quiet signal. "Stay steady." "Father," she said smoothly. "This is Kaizen Miller." I stepped forward and offered my hand. "Good to meet you, sir." He didn't take it right away. He studied my face like he was looking for cracks in concrete. Then he finally shook. His grip was hard, meant to test. I didn't squeeze back harder. I just held steady. "Miller," he said flatly. "Don't know the name." "Then you don't read your own project reports," I answered calmly. His mouth twitched, not a smile, something close. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something, but Victor waved him off without looking away from me. "Dinner?" Victor said. "Le Monarch, don't be late." We turned and walked toward the elevators. Natalia's fingers brushed my wrist for half a second. "Thank you." Upstairs in the suite, I finally put on the suit. The charcoal fabric settled on my shoulders like it had been waiting for me. Natalia watched me tie my tie with a focus that felt too personal. "You clean up well," she said. "So do you," I answered, and this time I didn't hide that I meant it. At Le Monarch, the air smelled like truffle oil and money. The lighting was low and careful. Victor and his lawyer were already seated at a corner table. Victor didn't stand when we approached, he just watched. "Father," Natalia said, her voice tight but controlled, "we're here." I pulled out her chair. She sat. I pushed it in gently before taking my seat beside her. Small gestures matter in rooms like that. Victor noticed everything. "So," he said, cutting into his steak without looking at me. "You're married." Quote, I reached across the table and covered the back of Natalia's hand with mine. Her skin was cool, almost cold. She turned her palm slightly, letting our fingers settle together. It felt natural in a way I hadn't expected. "Yes," I said. "Private ceremony. We prefer it that way." Victor's eyes moved to the ring. Gold, catching the light. No wobble, no weakness. Dinner became a battlefield. He fired questions about revenue, expansion, supply chains, labor margins. He spoke like he was trying to catch me in a lie. The problem was, I knew the answers. I bought the walnut. I negotiated the brass. I scheduled the cruise. I had the scars to prove it. "You seem very informed about my daughter's operations," Victor said finally. "I take an interest in what matters to my wife," I replied. I let that word sit there. Wife. Solid. Heavy. Then it happened. Natalia reached for her water and knocked over the heavy silver salt cellar. It hit the floor with a sharp metallic crack. The sound cut through the room. She froze. I felt her body stiffen beside me. Victor's expression changed instantly. "Clumsy," he said coldly. "Just like your mother." The word mother landed like a blade. Natalia flinched. "Not big, not dramatic, just enough." I didn't raise my voice. I bent down, picked up the salt cellar, and inspected the hinge. The pin had popped loose. Nothing more. "It's fine," I said calmly. "Sterling is soft. It needs a steady hand." "That piece is antique," Victor snapped. I picked up a dessert spoon and used the handle as leverage. One clean movement, and the pin snapped back into place. Clean. Quiet. No drama. I set it back on the table like nothing had happened. "You can't force things meant to hold," I added, looking directly at him. "You ruin them." Victor stared at me, then at the repaired hinge. "Impressive," he muttered. Under the table, Natalia's hand found my knee. She squeezed once, hard. I covered her fingers gently. She was ice cold. The rest of dinner passed with fewer bullets. Victor wasn't convinced, but he wasn't dismissing me either. That was enough. Outside, the Chicago night was wet and shining. The ride back was silent at first. Streetlights smeared across the windshield like streaks of gold. "He bought it," she whispered finally. "For now," I said. "He's suspicious." She stared at her ring. The gold glowed softly in the car light. "You stood between me and him," she said quietly. "I fixed a salt shaker," I answered. Her head turned slowly toward me. "You did more than that." The car stopped in front of her building. Tall glass tower, cold and perfect. She didn't move to get out right away. She just stared forward. Breathing slow. "I should call him," she murmured. "Don't." She looked at me, irritation flashing. "You don't know him." "No," I said calmly. "But I know men who want control. If you call now, you give him what he wants. Reaction." Her jaw tightened. Her phone buzzed in her hand before she could respond. "Victor," she answered. "What is it?" Quote, I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. Cold, demanding, testing. He was pushing, trying to make her flinch. "I'm not discussing this tonight," she said firmly. "You have your lawyer. I have mine. We'll talk tomorrow." Quote. She hung up before he could respond. Her hand shook once before she steadied it. "I can't keep playing his game," she whispered. "You don't have to," I said. "Rewrite the rules." She looked at me like she wasn't sure if she could believe that. "You're not alone," I added quietly. Something shifted in her eyes then. Not fear, not anger, something closer to trust. "Friday," she said softly. "Your world." "Friday," I confirmed. She opened the car door and stepped out into the rain. Before closing it, she leaned back down slightly. "Don't disappear on me, Kaizen." I held her gaze. "I'm not going anywhere." The next morning, I tried to lose myself in work. The shop smelled like oil and fresh wood. The heater rattled. My hands moved on their own, cutting clean lines, shaping edges, sanding surfaces until they felt like silk. But my mind wasn't there. It was in a marble office with glass walls, and a woman who had finally stopped pretending she wasn't afraid. My phone buzzed on the workbench. "Can you meet me?" I didn't hesitate. "Where?" "My office." 1 hour. No suit. I grabbed my jacket and headed out into the Chicago cold. The wind cut across my face, sharp and awake. Something told me this wasn't just about the board anymore. When I walked into her office, she was pacing, heels sharp against marble. Her assistant closed the door behind me, leaving us alone. Natalia turned when she heard my boots. For half a second, she looked relieved. Then the steel came back. "Victor's lawyer called again," she said. He's demanding a special vote. He's trying to scare the undecided board members. "What's your move?" I asked. She stopped pacing and looked at the skyline through the glass wall, gray buildings under gray sky. "I fight," she said quietly. "I don't fold." "That's not a strategy," I replied. "That's pride." Her head snapped toward me. Not angry, just sharp. "Then give me something better." I stepped closer, resting my hand lightly on the edge of her desk, close enough for her to feel it. Not close enough to cross a line. "You have allies," I said. "People who believe in you. You built this company on relationships, not fear. Use that. Call them. Bring them in. Make it public inside the boardroom before you can spin it in private." She studied me carefully, like she was measuring whether I was worth trusting with more than a dinner act. "I don't ask for help," she said softly. "I know." Her jaw tightened. "I've had to prove myself my entire life." "You already have," I answered. "Now you let other people prove they stand with you." There was a long pause. Then she nodded once. Decision made. "Stay," she said. "Board meeting in 30 minutes." The conference room felt colder than the Ritz had. Long glass table. Chrome chairs. No music, no warmth, just tension, waiting to snap. Board members filtered in. Some avoided her eyes. Some nodded politely. Victor's lawyer sat at the far end, smug and calm. Natalia walked in last. Not rushed, not shaken, controlled. I took the seat beside her without asking. "Let's get started," she said, voice clear and steady. Victor's lawyer stood. "Ms. Vance, the trust has concerns about stability and long-term." "Sit down," she cut in calmly. The room froze. "You want to talk about stability?" she continued, looking around the table. "Let's talk about numbers, growth, vendor retention, expansion contracts. We've increased margins every quarter for 3 years." She slid a folder across the table. "Clean data, clear proof. I built this company from nothing," she said. "And I did it without compromising integrity." Victor's lawyer leaned forward. "Your father controls the trust. If he loses confidence—" "I don't need his confidence," she replied. "I need yours." That landed differently, not defiance, leadership. The silver-haired board member adjusted her glasses. "Victor believes a merger strengthens the company." "A merger strengthens his control," Natalia corrected. "Not the company." The room shifted slightly. Subtle, but real. I watched her carefully. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't emotional, she was steady. And that was more dangerous than anger. "I've already secured preliminary support from 4 of you," she said. "If we vote today, the acquisition fails." Murmurs filled the room. Victor's lawyer's smile slipped. "You've been busy," he said tightly. "I've been prepared," she replied. The door opened before he could respond. Victor walked in. No announcement, just presence, heavy and sharp. He looked directly at her, not at the board, not at me, just her. "Are we really doing this?" he asked coldly. She didn't stand. She didn't look away. "Yes." The silence stretched tight. "You're risking everything," he said, "for pride." "No," she answered calmly, "for freedom." His jaw clenched. "You don't have the leverage." She leaned back in her chair. "I have the board." One by one, board members began speaking, not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. They referenced performance, contracts, stability. They referenced her leadership. Victor's confidence cracked slowly. It was subtle, but I saw it. His eyes moved more. His hands tightened. "You're choosing emotion over power," he snapped. "We're choosing sustainability over control," the silver-haired woman replied firmly. The momentum shifted. Fully this time. Victor stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. "This isn't over," he said. "It is," Natalia replied softly. He stared at her for a long moment. Something complicated flickered there. Anger, disappointment, maybe even something like respect, buried deep under control. Then he walked out, his lawyer following quickly behind him. The door closed. And just like that, it was quiet. Board members relaxed. Conversations started. The tension dissolved like steam. Natalia didn't move at first. She just sat there, breathing slowly. "You're free," I said quietly. She looked at me, and for the first time since she walked into my shop, she smiled. Not polished, not strategic, real. "I'm free," she repeated. When the room cleared, we stood alone by the glass wall. The city stretched out beneath us. "I couldn't have done that alone," she said. "You did," I replied. "I just reminded you." She stepped closer, not close enough to touch, close enough to feel. "Friday?" she said softly. "Your world." I smiled slightly. "Don't underestimate it." Her eyes held mine a little longer than necessary. "I won't." Quote. For a second, the air between us felt different. No contracts, no board, no father, just two people who had stood side by side in a storm. And something told me Friday wasn't going to be simple. Friday came with a different kind of pressure, no marble floors, no glass walls, no board members in suits pretending they didn't care, just my world. I picked her up myself, no driver, no security. Just my truck with a cracked dashboard and the heater that only worked if you kicked it twice. She stood outside her building in jeans and a simple black sweater, no blazer, no armor. Her hair pulled back in a low ponytail. She looked younger, softer. "You're underdressed," she said when she opened the passenger door. "You're overdressed," I replied. She hesitated before climbing in. The leather seat squeaked under her. She glanced around the truck like it was foreign territory. "This is your reality?" she asked. "This is the clean version," I said. We pulled up to a brick building near the river. Old warehouse converted into a shared makerspace. Light spilled from the windows. Laughter echoed through the door before we even stepped inside. The moment we walked in, heads turned. Not because of her money, not because of power, because she was different, polished in a room full of grease stains and inked forearms. My friend Marco came up first, wiping his hands on a rag. "Kai, you brought a lawyer?" He grinned. "Worse," I said. "She's corporate." Natalia stiffened for half a second. Then she smiled. Not the boardroom smile, a smaller one, uncertain but real. "I can hear you," she said. Laughter broke the tension. I introduced her properly. Designers, welders, a ceramic artist who always smelled like clay. These were people who built things because they loved to, not because they were chasing leverage. At first, she stayed close to me, observing, calculating. Then, something shifted. Marco dragged her toward a half-finished steel installation and started explaining the concept. She listened, really listened, asking questions that weren't about profit margins. "You don't do this for money?" she asked him. He shrugged. "Money keeps the lights on. This keeps me sane." I watched her process that. Later, she stood beside me while I showed her a custom table I was finishing, solid walnut, hand-joined corners, no hidden screws, just craftsmanship. "You could charge double for this," she said automatically. "I don't want to," I answered. She ran her hand across the surface slowly. "You built something that can't be taken away." "So did you," I replied. She looked at me differently then, not as a contractor, not as a strategic ally, as someone she was trying to understand. The night loosened her. She laughed at bad jokes. She held a welding torch for 30 seconds and nearly panicked before laughing at herself. The gray tape inside her grandmother's ring flashed when she lifted her hand. Still snug, still solid. At one point, we stepped outside for air. The river moved quietly behind us, Chicago lights reflecting on dark water. "This is terrifying," she admitted softly. "What is?" Quote, "Being somewhere I don't control." I leaned against the brick wall. "You don't have to control everything." She shook her head slowly. "Control kept me safe." "No," I said gently. "It kept you alone." That hit. I saw it. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel her warmth in the cold air. "When you stood up to him," I said quietly, "that wasn't control. That was strength." Her eyes searched mine. No boardroom steel, no defensive polish, just a woman who had spent her whole life proving she didn't need anyone. And when you stood between us, she whispered, that wasn't a contract. No, I agreed. Silence stretched between us. Not awkward, heavy, real. We lied to him, she said softly. Yeah. She looked down at the ring, then back at me. But I didn't hate it. That wasn't a corporate move. That was a confession. You don't have to play alone anymore, I said. Her hand found mine. Not strategic, not for show, just instinct. For the record, she said, voice steady but softer than I'd ever heard it. I never wanted to win just to prove him wrong. What did you want? She took a breath. To build something that's mine. And maybe share it with someone who isn't afraid of it. Quote, the city hummed around us. Water moved. Music echoed faintly from inside. I'm not afraid of you, I said. She smiled slowly. The kind that starts small and grows. Good, she whispered. Because this time when she stepped closer, there was no war, no father, no board, no performance, just us. And for the first time since she walked into my shop asking me to pretend, neither of us felt like we were acting anymore.